Good afternoon. Ooh, y'all feel good, you sound good, you look good too. Give yourselves a round of applause. My name is Teresa Zilk, and I'll be up here for a few minutes sharing my poetry with you. Before I do that, I want to thank the Art Center for inviting me. I want to thank Robert for inviting me. And I want to thank all of you for being here. The poem that I am about to do is called The Candy Bowl. And the Candy Bowl pays homage to African-American matriarchs. Particularly when I wrote this poem, I was thinking about the woman who raised me, my mother. In our house, we had a candy bowl. Depending on where you're from, maybe you call it something a little different. But in my house, the candy bowl was a place that was something that let us know that we belonged. It told us that we were loved, and it told us that we were safe. And it was an object that connected us. And it helped us to remember that we were kin. So I'm going to present to you the candy bowl. Before I do that, can you give me some snaps? Thank you. Faithfully, you filled the candy bowl, making sure that the children would have something sweet when they came to visit. The thing is, it was never about the candy. It was always about the love. With its crystalline beauty and top-heavy clink, the candy bowl was proof of our existence and our success. Amidst laughter and crying babies bounced on hips and rocked across laps, we savored the familiar brightness of peppermint as it landed on our tongues and told us that we were safe within your four walls. We, with soft hands, would never understand the sacredness of the candy bowl. How at 16, you boarded a train north, away from cotton fields, outhouses, and vanilla ice cream, away from people who knew your people and lovingly called you honey, baby, and child. You found work in a paper factory, supplementing your income over the years by making and selling dinners on the side. Saved enough money and sent for your parents so that they too could start a new life. After some years passed, you buried your parents and later your son. All the while, you never stopped filling the candy bowl. It sat on the small table in the living room, reflecting light from the lace curtain window. I watched you murmur prayers over the peppermints as you dropped them in, one by one. And this is how I learned that I too could overcome hard things. Thank you.
So thank you all for coming. I first want to thank Teresa Zilk. She is a very hard act to follow. I'm going to remember to introduce her like I did last time. Thank you very much for giving us the perfect start. Welcome to the Des Moines Art Center. I'm Laura Burkhalter, the Senior Curator here at the Art Center, and I am wildly honored to be here today with these three wonderful guests. I've got some long introductions because these are people that deserve long introductions, so bear with me just a moment while I introduce them. See, I have them in alphabetical order, and then you guys sat down in them. So I'm gonna start with B. Robert Moore. B. Robert Moore has the solo exhibition, Iowa Artists 2024, B. Robert Moore. He's also the co-curator with me of that exhibition, B. Robert Moore, in loving memory. Hopefully you've all had a chance to see it. It runs through October 20th, 2024. He is a self-taught, multidisciplinary artist from Des Moines who is heavily influenced by socio-political events, cultural criticism, and collective identity related to the African-American experience. After 7 years as a full-time artist, Moore's work has been featured in Ebony Magazine, Design Milk, and Complex, as well as gallery shows in Los Angeles and New York. His work has been collected by the likes of Dr. Joy Simmons, Aisha Selden, Gail King, Lil Yachty, Taraji P. Henson, Taye Diggs, the Des Moines Art Center, and very importantly, and the Louisiana Museum of Art, and I think probably many more institutions to come. Thank you for joining us. Nikole Hannah-Jones. Nikole Hannah-Jones is the Pulitzer Prize-winning curator of the 1619 Project and a staff writer at the New York Times Magazine. The book version of the 1619 Project, as well as the 1619 Project children's book, Born on the Water, were #1 New York Times bestsellers. Her 1619 Project is also a 6-part documentary on Hulu, which won the Emmy for Outstanding Documentary or Nonfiction Series. Hannah-Jones has spent her career investigating racial inequality and injustice, and her reporting has earned her the MacArthur Fellowship, known as the Genius Grant, a Peabody Award, 2 George Polk Awards, and the National Magazine Award 3 times. She also serves as the Knight Chair of Race and Journalism at Howard University, where she founded the Center for Journalism and Democracy. Hannah-Jones is also the co-founder of the Ida B. Wells Society for Investigative Reporting, which seeks to increase the number of investigative reporters and editors of color. And in 2022, she opened the 1619 Freedom School, a free after-school literacy program in her hometown of Waterloo, Iowa. Hannah-Jones holds a Master of Arts in Mass Communication. You guys, I'm never gonna get through that. She holds a Master of Arts in Mass Communication from the University of North Carolina at Chapel Hill and earned her Bachelor of Arts in History and African American Studies from Notre Dame. And then, Jordan Weber is a New York and Des Moines-based regenerative land sculptor and activist who works at the intersection of social justice and environmental apartheid through grassroots collaboration in industrial polluted neighborhoods. These projects include 4MX, which marks Malcolm X's birthplace in Omaha, an urban farm in North Minneapolis titled Prototype for Poetry versus Rhetoric. He's also carried out other large-scale projects in St. Louis, Detroit, Red Hook, Boston, and Des Moines. His work has been featured in Iowa Artist 2016 here at the Art Center, and also Monument Valley in 2019 at the Des Moines Art Center, and his work is, 2 works by him are part of the Art Center's permanent collection. He is the winner of multiple awards, including the 2023 Guggenheim Award, the 2022 United States Art Award, the 2021 inaugural Harvest Loeb Art Lab Fellowship. So that's a lot, thank you all. So I've got some just sort of, I'm not gonna call them questions, I'm gonna call them general talking points that I want all of you to comment on. One thing we're often here, many of the members of this audience join us for many things. We're often talking, yeah, pass the mic. We often talk about art and what that word means. Art is an abstract term, and it can mean many things to individuals, but also can mean anything to society and culture at different places of time. But the word that I want to talk, the 3 of you to talk about, is history. All of you engage with history, whether it's personal, political, deep time history, land history, in your work one way or the other. But that's a loaded word and a word that can mean things as something you're going after and also as an influence. So I'd like each of you to sort of talk about what your definition of history is and what role it plays in your process.
Oh, I guess I get to go first. That's a good question. You know, if I were to break down the word, I'm not formally trained in anything besides just for kindergarten through 12th grade, but I'm formally trained in life. So when I think of history, for me, it's what we've been taught versus what we're learned or what we learn. If you were to break apart the word history, it's his story. And I really feel like our history has been portrayed or delivered to us almost in a fairy tale story sense. It's a fairy tale for some and a nightmare for others. if you peel back the layers of the onion, which is what I do through my practice, which is why I also felt it important for all of us to be on the stage, our geographical connection, our racial identity, and the work we're doing outside. We're really, there's a theme throughout our work outside of those other themes I just mentioned. And that's us focusing on some form of history, reinterpreting it, examining it, and also responding to it based on the truths that we've been taught and the truths we're learning, or lack thereof. So that's how I look at history from an art perspective.
I'm going to jump in because I am not following Nikole. That's happened to me too many times. In my practice, when I think of history, I think of what has happened to Iowa, what has happened to the Midwest, what has happened to the U.S. In colonial times. So post-colonial, Iowa is the #1 altered landmass in the U.S. So we have less than 1% of native land left. Prairie, wetland, you name it, we don't have it anymore. With that history of that, we also are top 3 in the U.S. consistently. I'm talking about Iowa for black and white male discrepancies in the prison population. So when I think of history, I think of Iowa, I think of trauma. Trauma on the land and then trauma on the body. And I got a whole row of homeboys here that has been probably listening to that same thing for 10 years straight. I can't get that out of my head. The lack of the ability for us to historically move in a space biologically with plant matter all the way up to the physical present community and neighborhood. We cannot move and be free to move and be whatever singularity in a space like Iowa. And that's what I think about when I think of history. Can't get Iowa out of my head.
So first of all, thank you for inviting me to come back home to have this talk with you. I'm also a collector. I wasn't on the list, but I'm also a collector. That's how we met. Was I found Robert on Instagram, and his work, because it's so social political, also spoke to my work. And then I found out he was also a fellow Iowan, and y'all know you don't meet a lot of black folks from Iowa who aren't related to you. So, you know, when I think of history, I always talk about the 1619 Project it's not a work of history, it's a work of memory. Because what we commonly think of as history is not actually history, right? Because everything that happened, happened. We just don't learn about most of it. We learn a very curated version of the past, and that's really about shaping our collective memory of who we are as a society, really to justify power, to justify inequality, to justify all of the systems that we engage with. And so all 3 of us on this stage are really working in memory, that we're trying to actively engage the history that's been left out of the focus of the lens, right? To expand that aperture and to say the silences are telling you just as much about your country and your community as the things that you learn. And I think all of our work are trying to bring those things out of the shadows into the center of the narrative. You know, it is not lost on me, of course, that I'm speaking about history in a state that tried to ban my work from the classroom. I imagine to prevent other little Nikole Hannah-Joneses from learning Black studies and then going on to do the kind of work that we do, right? The revolutionary work that we're trying to do. And that it is difficult to teach my work, even though the ban didn't pass because Iowa passed a critical race theory, anti-critical race theory law, or divisive concept law. And so when you pass a law like that, what you're really trying to do is restrict our imagination. You're trying to restrict the way that we can collectively understand more holistically our country so that we can imagine a different future. And that is actually punishing not just to Black kids, but to every child in the classroom. So that's really what our work is about. It's saying we will not be silenced. These histories will not be silenced.
So Jordan queued me up really well. My next topic I want to talk about is Iowa. I think probably all three of you have a lot to say about Iowa. And again, it's an abstract term. There is the Iowa that is this myth that is false, that is sold to maybe people outside Iowa. There is all of your personal experiences being an Iowan, and also just probably all of your own opinions based on the lives that you've led, especially both of you being outside Iowa for a significant amount of time. So whatever direction you want to take that topic, I'm really interested to hear. Who wants to start?
There's a lot of good and a lot of bad in that, and I'm going to start with the good. Des Moines is like my backbone, my foundation, my heart. I came into this room with my dad. I don't know what lecture it was. You brought me here. He's sitting in the third row, so I'm calling him out. But yeah, he's right there. I don't know if you were working with the Des Moines Visitors Bureau at that time. He was chauffeuring for Jesse Jackson around that time. He was doing quite a bit. Co-founded the Black Soldiers Memorial in the south side of Des Moines. I came down these steps to sit at a lecture that he was a part of. I don't know if you were on the stage, I don't remember, but this is when I was 10, 11 years old. I also grew up coming to this museum because of my mom. My mom was an artist, is an artist, I should say, went to Drake. So that's the good, that I was able to build a foundation in a space like Des Moines, much in a similar way as Robert. We were doing our own thing, being held down by black folks, being held down by white allies, in a space where you could do that work. I don't know how to continue to do that work on land in a way that would impact the black body and the black community in a way that would be effective enough, like it is in the East Coast, like it is in other cities. So the bad is it's beautiful to be built up here in Iowa. In Des Moines, I should say, not Iowa. I don't know how we sustain practice in a space like this. Robert has done an amazing job doing that. And I felt like I hit a peak when, George Floyd was killed, to be on the front lines of, Ferguson when Michael Brown was killed. And I can't physically stay in a space like Iowa and continue to do that type of work collectively in an impactful way without being outside of it. And I think that's a big problem. And I don't know what the answer is to that. Yeah, so I'll just leave it at that.
So it's a great question to contemplate, and one I have to admit I don't often get because I'm not often talking in Iowa and nobody cares. But all three of us, you were saying you wanted to talk about this at some point, Robert. All three of us are biracial. I mean, I'm a black woman who just happens to be biracial. I don't know how you all self-identify, but so I grew up seeing, immersed in two very different Iowas. My white mother grew up in Swisher, so rural Iowa, white grandparents who disowned my mom when she found out when they found out that she was dating a black man, and then re-embraced her when she had my sister, who was their first grandchild. So I grew up around white family as the only black kids, and spending time, in rural Iowa on my grandparents' property with grandparents who loved us to death, but were also racist. And that there were certain conversations and certain parts of my identity that I could never be completely whole. We couldn't have certain conversations if we wanted to keep the peace. So I just remember being around people who loved us to death and yet could not love us wholly. That the older I got, the more and more of myself I had to keep to myself if I didn't want to argue, particularly with my grandfather. And then I grew up in Waterloo, right, which is the most heavily black city in the state, in a black neighborhood, around my black family, some of which are sitting in the second row here, immersed in that part of Iowa. And one thing that I think about now, I've written it, but I've never published it. So my white grandfather and my black grandmother were born in the same year, 1924. My grandmother was born in Greenwood, Mississippi, in a thoroughly apartheid state. My grandfather was born here in Iowa. His parents had immigrated from, at that time, Czechoslovakia. And so everything about their lives were shaped by those two things on their birth certificate, right? As a white man, my grandfather could live in any neighborhood that he wanted to if he could afford it. He could work any job if he had the education for it. He could attend any school that he wanted. My white grandmother never worked outside the house because he was able to make enough money to give them a middle-class lifestyle as a white man. And my grandmother, my black grandmother, could do none of those things. There were entire parts of the city she could never live. She had to buy her house in a red line neighborhood. She worked as a domestic. She had to drop out of school in the 4th grade. She never had the chance to acquire the things. She worked every day and never was able to own that type of property, have that type of middle-class lifestyle. And so I think growing up in Iowa for me, and growing up literally in the middle of that racial divide and being, you know, a nerdy, my cousin would tell you, very nerdy. I know it's hard to believe because I'm so glamorous now, but I used to be a painfully nerdy child, and I was very observant of things that probably other kids weren't paying attention to. And so I thought about race from a really young age, and I was trying to understand how the two sides of my family could have such disparate experiences, and it wasn't about work ethic. My family worked hard on the white side and the black side, but working hard on the white side allowed you to acquire a lot of things. And working hard on the black side meant that you were still always struggling to hold on to the little bit that you had. And so without Iowa, I wouldn't be the journalist that I am. I wouldn't have the questions and spend my adult life trying to resolve these questions and help America grapple with these questions, because I had that dual experience in a very white state. As you said, we do have the highest, it's never below 3, it's usually 1, racial disparity in incarceration, and that racial disparity in incarceration is driven by Waterloo. Like it is driven by mass incarceration of the black population in Waterloo, including my family. So that is how I think about Iowa, as a place that I'm proud of. Waterloo is on my wrist. Everyone, I don't know if John Wayne Gacy put Waterloo on the map, so I'm gonna say I helped put Waterloo on the map. Right, but so I'm proud of where I came from. I don't think we should ever be ashamed of what made us, but also understand that a lot of what makes you is trauma. A lot of what makes you is not a positive thing, even though I did have, you know, an amazing family that I'm still very close with. But this was a hard place to be a black child, and it's a hard place to be black people.
I resonated with what both of y'all said, but what Nikole said, there was a couple things that stood out to me, having that biracial family, interracial makeup, because I got 2 different experiences. I feel like Iowa is like, I've always felt like it's home, but I don't know if I belong here. But I don't want to leave, but it also feels like a home that you go to and you got like a mean relative. But like you still want to go home because there's some good experiences there, but you know you got someone that's like not good. And sometimes that ratio feels like the whole house. And it feels like what Nikole was saying, just I keep a lot of things to myself throughout the years. I've explained this in some of my talks and my studio visits and my lectures. I got a lot of these tattoos in areas my dad does not like my neck and my face. He hates it. But because I don't want some of y'all talking to me. I don't want the fakeness. There's someone in the crowd I sat on a board with when I didn't have tattoos and I had a white collar. But they told me this term I'll never forget called Iowa nice. And so that fakeness, I'm just not for it. Like I'd rather have, that's why like sometimes when people are on stage and they're saying things that like aren't comfortable, but it's their truth, I'd almost rather have that than some fakeness and then having them say those same things behind a curtain, because I can deal with that up front. So I always felt like that to me in that respect. And I would love people to talk to me, but not if you're going to judge me based on something on the outside. Most of the time of my life, it's been my skin. I also have had two different experiences, not only having an interracial family makeup, both white and black, rural and city, but I've also had that throughout my years growing up. I grew up in public school, Des Moines Public School, very diverse, but I was light-skinned. So I actually got roasted a lot by kids that were darker than me. But the one thing that I have noticed, those kids almost always grew out of that. Darker kids only gave me crap while they were kids, As they became adults, they grew out of it. Where on the flip side, after 8th grade, Harding Middle School here at Des Moines Public School, my parents moved to the suburbs. I went to Johnston. That was a major culture shock. There was like literally 4 kids in the whole school. I had heard racist terms a time or two, but in Des Moines Public Schools, if you said a racist term, you had multiple nationalities, multiple people coming for you. In Johnston, it was not like that. So I've had 2 different experiences. The difference is a lot of those white kids that were learned or taught this racist behavior, a lot of them didn't grow out of it because they kept going back to those unhealthy environments, those cesspools that kept feeding that same toxic mentality. Where black kids, in their innocence, of course I'm going to protect them because a lot of this stuff was learned biologically if you do your research. They grew out of it because they were exposed to other environments. They didn't receive that type of habitual, negative, toxic, racist teachings at home. And it really does start at home. So, and because Iowa is my home, that's another reason why I'm trying to stay here. It ain't easy. As much as I might be commended for staying here and building a sustainable practice, it's been hard as hell. And I get it why people leave. But I'm trying to fill holes where people before me were, and that's what we're supposed to do. If I get in these rooms, I want more than just me on the stage, you know, and I know that'll come back around, and I know other people will see it. So this is the Iowa energy I'm looking for. It's just not necessarily been felt. But look, today, we're already doing something different, so.
So one of the things that you will definitely hear white people say about Iowa is like that there's been some sort of sudden change. Like suddenly, like Iowa was this way, and then in 2016, things suddenly like changed. And then obviously, I can tell by the way you're all reacting to me even saying that. Acknowledging that it is not a sudden change and it's just a more vocal expression of what was already there. Are you hopeful or pessimistic about the future of Iowa in any way, shape, or form? Be honest.
I haven't gone first yet. I won't force it to go before me. Well, I'm not hopeful about much, period. Iowa, the United States, I think we are in a very dangerous period. And I would actually push back just a little on the premise, because I do think something has changed in Iowa. I'm not pretending there was not always a racist undercurrent. This is a very white state. Most white people have never had to deal, most people in this state have never had to really deal with a significant population of people who weren't white, and particularly black folks. But I do think politically something has changed. I mean, the Iowa that I grew up in did value public education, right? Was not cutting public schools, was proudly boasted about being one of the best states for education in the country. The things that we're seeing in the politics here, you know, anti-labor, I could not have imagined the Iowa of my childhood passing a right-to-work law. I couldn't imagine some of the regressive policies that are being passed. So no, Iowa was never a utopia, but I think I don't think you can blame it on Trump alone. I think Trump is a product of our country, but Trump is also a product of 8 years of a black presidency that broke something in a lot of white folks who thought that they were okay, and then actually saw a black person in the White House and could not deal with how they thought that a black person ascending must mean that they were somehow descending. And I think that and the demographic shifts of our country, right? So what happens when Obama gets elected is white Americans, even those who voted for him, because I came back and reported how Iowa could vote for Obama twice and then elect Trump. This actually is not shocking if you study white people for a living like I do. A lot of white folks were shocked because y'all don't study yourselves in the right way, but I was not shocked, right? So what they realized, though, is that Obama was never elected with the majority of the white vote, even though white people took this to mean, well, we are no longer racist because we elected Obama. No, a minority of white people elected Obama, with a majority of black voters, Latino voters, Asian voters, and indigenous voters. And that demographic reality became very frightening for many white Americans, and particularly white Americans in a place like Iowa. And I think that's where we saw this really regressive politics, the MAGA politics coming out of that, was a fear that the demographics of the nation were changing in a way where white people could not be assured that they would be the arbiters of power. And now they were going to have to share that power demographically. And so then they wanted to adopt these policies that make it harder to vote, make it harder to make a living wage, because believe it or not, you know, black folks actually join unions at the highest rates if you look at any government entity, because government, it's more difficult to be discriminatory when you work for government versus private industry. We're overrepresented in government. So all of these things are coming out of, I think, this realization that the demographics of the nation had changed in a way where white people felt their power being challenged. So our state has changed. The ugly politics that we see now, I mean, I grew up under Terry Branstad, and now Terry Branstad looks amazing.
Yeah.
I mean, seriously,
no,
right?
It's true.
I mean, when I was growing up, Terry Branstad was the devil in my household. And now, like, my mom would love to see a Terry Branstad compared to who y'all got now. And so I think we have to also call that out, that there has been a shift. But it's also a choice, because this still is one of the whitest states in the country. There are enough white people that you don't have to have the politics that you have. So it's a choice. It's a choice of a lot of people who are willing to trade, right, on policies that actually hurt. I mean, didn't they just pass the six-week abortion laws about to go in place?
Last week.
These are policies that are mostly going to hurt white people, because most of the people in this state are white. And so y'all have to decide, what are you going to do? But I think we have to be honest that a very rightward shift has occurred in the state in a way that is going to be very dangerous for most folks, but most dangerous for us.
I'm going to be hyper negative again. That's just who I am. My crew, a little bit, but not really. I'm not hopeful. When we started talking about like reparations through land and the land back movement in Iowa and throughout the U.S. in general, there have been pushes throughout the U.S. to get black folks back on land, to get black farmers back on land. There's a Farmers Bureau grant right here. But at the same time, Southern Iowa, Missouri, I think it was Kentucky, there's a class action lawsuit for selling black folks bad seeds. This is in 2020. And then COVID hit, so it kind of got swept under the rug. So I'm like, that's happening while we're also talking about getting land back. Another one of my homeboys, his uncle owns thousands of acres in Iowa, but he's one of few black farmers left. So when I'm talking about, and you read these accolades out of mine, but these accolades, I'm pursuing these things to get the funding so I can push into initiatives like land and detoxifying land. with asthma rates, with toxic water, with lead and all that. When we started talking about all these things, the same shit was going on in the background. People are tightening themselves up around land even more so, selling bad seeds and all that. So when I think about if there is hope in Iowa, I really would love to see black organizations and black NGOs be able to afford a practice in Iowa like white folks are. So we have a number of organizations in Des Moines, Iowa that will give $10,000, $20,000 to black organizations while giving a lot more to white organizations when those black organizations have a proven track record of actually doing the work. So that along with, thank you. So that along with this tightening around land and the monocropping that has been happening in Iowa, the lack of biodiversity and how that trickles up, like I was kind of touching on before, is the same. It's the same trick. So you were talking about before, and I call it Robert BJ since I don't know when. I don't think he even likes it.
I just have to explain it now.
We talk about these things, like how do you practice in a state like Iowa and also make impact? Like we have the worst water, for example, in the U.S. besides Indiana. How do we talk about actually being able to claim land, get land back, keep black farmers here, and be on a space so we can deal with toxic stress and trauma in a way that's funded by those same organizations who are trickling money to us, 10, 20,000. Like we need hundreds of thousands, if not millions of dollars to actually do the work here. And that's why I'm not hopeful. I don't see that changing anytime soon. Unless you have a big name and you can come back and you can do public art initiatives like I'm trying to do currently right now, it's really hard to do that from the inside. I got no claps.
Well, first of all, he said BJ, so I'll just get that out the way. You see Bobby on my arm. Robert, Bobby, I'm a junior, but growing up, I used to get called BJ. I hate that. Because I used to get teased. I won't even fill in the blanks, but I didn't like it. We all grew up, you know what I mean? So, let me move on real quick from that. So, I don't know how to feel. I mean, my #1 job is being a dad. So I'm really in Iowa. I'm really in Iowa because my kids are here. Everything else is secondary. But while I'm here and I don't have really a choice to leave, and I'm trying to embrace where I'm at and make something out of it, do something different. If you notice my practice or follow my practice, I'm constantly moving around, doing different stuff, just trying to be different. I may be referencing the same, but trying to make it different. So my hope might come from just that idea of frequency. And like, if I see enough people that are here, that are like me, or embrace me and my people, and I see it at the ground level. There's a lot of people in the community. There's even like, and I don't know, maybe I just haven't been exposed to it over the years. And these things, the ebbs and flows of life, there's a constant desire, I think, for change. There's a constant desire for community. And if I ain't gonna go anywhere, y'all don't see me outside. I'm telling y'all, y'all will not see me outside unless there's some black stuff going on. And that's not racist. I've spent 35 years consumed in white everything without choice. So I'm very intentional when I come outside. And so when I do come outside, I'm noticing other seeds being planted. And I know what happens when seeds are planted. There's new growth, and usually multiple seeds come out of that. So my only hope comes from that I can plant some seeds, but I ain't thinking I'm gonna see any fruits of my labor while I'm still alive. I can't say that. I'm not hopeful for that at all. I can see the fruits of my art being received. I can see how storytelling is important for connection and understanding and change. But Iowa has a long history of things that need undone. And I don't know if I can see that within my lifetime. But if I'm having kids and I am a father and I have offspring, if they are here and here not by force but by choice and they decide to stay, I want to do everything I can possible to set an example for them so they can see what was started and hopefully they can continue. Because otherwise, there'd be a whole state dedicated to black folks, and there isn't a really good history that goes along with us trying to build our own communities. Because we would have all just left and started our own thing. But if you do your homework, you'll see that usually ends in murder. So.
Could I add something? Could I add something to that? Because your answers both just inspired me to answer in a slightly more hopeful way, which is a strange feeling for me. But you were excited about that, huh? Sorry, y'all, I'm crazy. But you know, I do have some hope in what a small number of black folks in Iowa are trying to do. And I'm going to speak, you know, directly to my hometown of Waterloo. We have, I have 2 members of my 1619 Freedom School here, Joy Briscoe, Lori Dale. You know, Waterloo was named one of the worst places in America to be black, which is an amazing feat when you consider nobody even knows Waterloo exists or that black people are there. Right, so that tells you, and one of the main issues, of course, I mean, in everything, incarceration rates, poverty rates, home ownership gap, wealth gap, achievement gap. And so our Freedom School are taking the black kids that folks think can't learn, but we know better, and we're giving them the love, the resources, a black history curriculum taught by black educators, and we are seeing the results are not astounding because we know if we give our kids the same resources, they can do the same things. But almost none of that funding has come from Iowa. Almost none of that funding has come from Iowa. Rodney Anderson last year opened a black full-service grocery store. $0 came from Iowa. Literally, not $1 of support from Iowa philanthropy, from Iowa banks, none, right? We have a sister trying to open a black bank in Waterloo right now. Once again, we're having to try to go outside of the state to get support. So that tells me something very clear. There are people in Iowa who prefer and need black folks to remain on the bottom of the caste system and the bottom of the economic system. Because what we're always told is, stop asking for handouts, do something for yourselves. And when you have black folks who are trying to do something for themselves, you can't even get support from your own state. So I think we need to think about that there is hope. There are folks who are determined, self-determination, to build our own institutions, to help ourselves, and we cannot get support. People can see us outside of the state and say, that's brilliant work you're doing. And then your neighbors won't give you $1, won't volunteer an hour. Okay? So I have hope in that I know that there are black folks who are determined to rise, but I wish that folks who come to this will talk to your neighbors, your friends, the people who own the banks, and ask them when black folks are trying to do something. Because the thing is, and let me not take over and get on my soapbox, but it's not good when you have a community that's so economically and educationally depressed. You might think that only hurts you, but it doesn't. Your entire community is improved when you help those who have been systematically held back. It is a benefit. It's not even altruism. It's actually just sound policy. So I think that has been the biggest issue. And I know it's hard for you to get support. I know it's hard for you to get support. You have folks, that's why people have to leave. It's not that everyone wants to flee the state. It's that many of us know if you are ever to realize your ambition as a black person, you can't do it here. And that's a damn shame because you should be able to.
I was itching to respond to that too because there's things that we talk about on the back end. Like I met Nikole the first time at the United Nations out in Manhattan. We've been talking about things, and this is the challenge. When I do these lectures, I'm like, these lectures are extractive also. Especially we're in like predominantly white rooms. It's extractive to hear us speak about these things, especially if you're at MoMA or you're at an institution that won't come out of pocket, but they want you to speak to their donors. So thank you. That felt great. So this is the challenge. I know there's funders in this room. I can't see that well, everybody, but you have 3 hyper-successful individuals in this room. We've been talking about doing something in Waterloo and in Des Moines. Land initiative, economically driven, talking about, food sovereignty, land sovereignty. You guys have the 3 of us up here, and there's a Q&A coming on. Like, come talk to us afterward. Like, we're ready to go. We got ideas. We have connections. We have European connections. We got East Coast connections. If you want to be affiliated with New York, we got New York connections. We need y'all to come approach us as well. So we're not out there hunting for funds consistently, because that hunt is very, very damaging. It takes a lot of time. I'm almost 40. I don't know. You said something earlier in the U&E. You're like, don't do the age thing. Okay, there you go. And Robert and I are almost the same age. It's taken 2 decades almost to get to this point, to be on the stage, to say these things confidently, to have these accolades and say these things, to try to line things up so we can get things going in Iowa, not in New York and not in LA, but in Iowa.
I'm glad. Since we're here because of the show that I have going on and all the important work that we are all doing, I just want to end that question and series of back and forth. It was really good dialogue. You can tell this means a lot to us. It strikes a chord of hope and also like some fire. So like, I need y'all to know, like, I am so grateful, like the donors, the members of the Art Center, the staff, the amount of compensation I was able to get to even get it off the floor to get this show together. But I need y'all to understand something for scale. If y'all understand economics, I spent over $100,000 of my own checking account money, not credit card. Like, if you had a bag of cash, I didn't get approved for 1 grant. I didn't get 1 email. Everyone's saying they love my work. Everyone's saying great job. I do have a couple people in here that have acquired works and do support, so I do thank you. But it just goes along to their point that I may be here. I may still be here. If I didn't have all that corporate background and some financial discipline, I wouldn't be able to stay here and keep doing what I'm doing. So in order to stay here, I need y'all to listen to what we're saying. And it ain't just about me. We all have different things that we're doing that we could use support. Because we're either looking in our own communities, which have been denied access, don't have the same resources, or we're using our own money. And like Nikole said, why are you asking for handouts? Be resourceful. Sure, I just showed y'all. I did it, but I'm also telling y'all it was not easy, and it isn't a sustainable model, because all my white counterparts are getting approved for these things. And I've done so much work. Do you want to know one of the things of my success that I can say when people say, man, how'd you blow up so fast? I stopped caring about y'all for a little bit. I deleted my Facebook. I kept my Instagram. I used it as a tool. I still do that. But I focused on finding my people everywhere but here. And I knew if I did it, y'all would notice me. It's funny, but it's true. Because y'all did. But I had to do that work, reverse engineer it. So I don't want to continue on because I get on my soapbox too. But this is my exhibit, so I want to just emphasize how much blood, sweat, tears, money, their time, their resources, we've all put into this work. And we do need support if it's genuine and authentic. Me personally, I ain't chasing no more. I don't even know if I want to apply for another grant. I don't know if I want to do any public work in artwork in town. I don't want to be denied for an opportunity when I feel like I deserve it. I just want to do work in my studio. And I want to stay here, but that's kind of where I've got.
So literally my last question was going to be, what's a dream project that you have that you want to work on? If you want to talk about that, I'm still interested. And if anybody here is interested in funding this dream project when they say it, like, because yeah, I mean, I know if you're creative people, you have projects that you want to work on, and sometimes those things don't happen because of your successes and time or personal blocks, but yes, you are here because we want to hear you on your soapbox about what the restrictions are on that. So if you have something that's a pie-in-the-sky project that you'd love to do and want to talk about, that's fine, but I absolutely understand if you don't want to answer that because of everything that you just said.
I still have the mic, so I'll just go. I think I covered a lot, so I don't have anything in particular because I don't want to share necessarily. I'm not sure who's all in the room. I don't want to share the ideas that I have. I don't want someone to take it. But hey, if you've seen what I've done in the last 4.5, 5 years, I have a lot of ideas and a lot of ambition, but I've done that with zero monetary support. Your physical support is very appreciated. Your spiritual support is still very appreciated, but I would love some money too.
I'm going to share my idea because y'all can take it, which is, you know, we actually have an amazing white ally in Waterloo who is the landlord in our building, who gives us, he basically pays half our rent for us every year since we started and told him what we were doing in there. But we have outgrown the space, which is also an amazing problem to have because so many children, you know, we didn't even know if the 1619 Freedom School would work because it's intensive literacy instruction after school, and the kids have been in school all day, and would they want to come and have to, you know, sit and get instruction? But they do, because many of them have never felt that type of investment, that type of love, and it is so hard to sit in class all day if you struggle to read. You can't do any of your academic subjects. You can't do word problems in math. You can't do science. You can't do anything. And that seeing kids go from not wanting to touch a book to the mom saying, because we give every child in our school a take-home library and a bookshelf, and we build them a library so they can have their own books in their room, and to hear mom say, now my child is coming home at night, and I open the door and he or she is reading a book. It's like the most fulfilling thing I've ever done. So we need a building. We're trying to, someone gifted us a house that we either have to expand and make much, much larger to be able to fit our school. But my dream, since we're just putting out dreams, is to be able to build a brand new state-of-the-art building for our school. It is an after-school program. I believe in public schools. I don't want to take away from the public schools where most of our kids will go, but we just want to support those schools in the way that we can. So that's my dream.
I'm gonna add on to that because I'm not pitching you. But when we talk about these things, I've been lecturing at Princeton. I've been an artist in residence at Yale. I was at the Graduate School of Design at Harvard. I'm doing these things so I can educate myself on architectural design and landscape design. Now that I've done that, you can see on the screen, I'm able to speak about architectural vernacular, what's culturally relevant to our people, that draw people into space. If I can do that for you in that space, to be and speak on that vernacular in a very spectacular way, it's gonna draw more people in, I'm down for it. We're already talking to people in Waterloo on the back end that are lawyers, like we can do that. But like I said before, if we got funders in the room and people love all of our work and they follow our work, like we do need that help. I'll take any money that I can get and flip it and push it back into black space. I'm down for it.
So I want to have time for audience questions, but before we get there, I want, if you three have any questions for each other or any observations, let's go. Nope.
I'll just ask, I didn't really rehearse. I never rehearse these things. Okay, so you had a chance to view, I've had a chance to consume your work. You own some of my work. It was interesting because I think Jordan said reparations. The piece you own, the piece she first got, I think she has one, I don't remember, was based on a Monopoly response that I did to the game Monopoly. And it was the money bag man, I forget the character's name, but I reimagined him as a black man, and he had his hand out, and it was titled Community Reparations. So you have that piece, and you've seen some other work, and now I know you have another one. Nikole purchased one of the pieces in the museum, in the current exhibit. So, thank you for that. And no, she didn't even ask for a discount. But so now you have two different works of mine, and now that I understand, one thing I noticed in this art world is really cool, is an artist's identity and a collector's identity, it's got to connect on some level. And where I noticed it is when I started noticing the same artists or peers in the same collections of collectors we've never talked to. That's what made it click for me, because I was like, wait, they have your work too? And some of you in the room have artwork of my friends that, I'm like, wow, you have her work? Because we have a similar identity. And if you don't relate to that identity, then you understand the work. And you can relate to the narrative or the identity of the work. So with that said, how do you feel about the intersection of your project and your work, and even the glimpse of the exhibit that you've seen downstairs? If you're okay.
Yeah, I would love to answer that question, because I agree. I collect, so one, I'm just a little baby collector. I don't study art, I just collect what speaks to me. And I only collect Black artists. I really only collect Black American artists, though occasionally when I travel abroad, I'll collect something. So I really only collect Black American artists who have a social political practice. I collect because the artists I collect study history. They are speaking to that history. They are speaking to the particular experience of Black Americans, and that's what speaks to me. And so the first time I saw most of the people I collect, I find on Instagram, frankly. So I follow so many artists, and then you see who those artists are following, and then the algorithm learns you, which is mostly bad for my shopping habit, but it's good for art. And so, you know, just being blessed today to come to your studio, and I could tell how your mind works by reading what you write about your art and seeing the themes through your art, you know, seeing those themes of trying to challenge notions of patriotism, those themes of you know, the military themes, which of course speak to me because my father was also in the military. Those themes of really calling out the hypocrisy of this country. I knew I wanted to collect, and I also like to follow someone for a while and like sit, because I'm always afraid I'm gonna collect right away and then you're gonna make something more dope and then I already spent my money. Right. But you also can sit on it and then somebody else collects the piece that you want. And I'm not a person, I don't really like prints. Like if I buy something, I want to have the original piece if possible. I only own one print. And that's because it's Bisa Butler, and I don't think I'll ever be able to afford to buy an original. So when I walked down, one, I could kind of see your influences, which are, you know, a lot of artists I saw you had, like Kafara down there. It's just powerful. It's powerful to see your show in this space. To see, you know, you go down those stairs and you just see all this Blackness in a space that I imagine, I mean, this is still a pretty not Black crowd. And this is, right, and this is probably more Black than the typical crowd who comes in here, because what that does is, one, it's subversive, which your work is subversive, but it's also then inviting in a community into a space like this who normally will not come. And I know the power of that. And the part that I couldn't spend a lot of time, have y'all gone down and seen it yet? Okay, I'm gonna show y'all the piece I bought, because it's the best one in there. The living room. I actually couldn't, I felt like I needed to go into the living room alone, because it brings up so many memories, and I know that there's like an audio recording of your dad, but I was like, I can't listen to it, because it makes me think about my own dad. It makes me think about all the loss. all the struggles. So I just have been, this is the first time we ever met in real life was today. Right? But I always call him my Iowa homeboy. Like, I always feel like to have connected with someone who's still here doing the work, who comes from such a similar background as me, who thinks, you know, I think in words, you do too though, right? But we practice in a different mediums, but we're doing the same work. Our work is resistance work, and our work is saying, you will see us. And that's why I see you.
I thought for sure you were gonna say I have 2 Iowa homeboys, because I got 1 Iowa homeboy. We're building still. We're gonna get there.
So are you guys?
I have 2 Iowa homeboys.
So are we ready for audience questions?
All right, let's do it. Let's go to the audience. So we'll take about 15 minutes of audience Q&A.
Hello, thank you guys so much for being here. As a fellow Black woman who identifies as interracial, your words really resonated with me, and I'm getting really emotional, sorry, because it's like your feedback was great. What would be your words of encouragement for fellow Black children that are still here in Iowa to persevere, even though given the context of the reality that they're living in?
Oh, I'm still recovering from what she just said. So, man, if I was giving advice to children or young people, okay, yeah. Sorry, I just wanted some clarification. I have biracial children. You wouldn't even guess it because they're extra light. That's a whole nother conversation, but I'm proud of my kids. They're my kids. But I also tell them, because they're so light, I'm like, not anyone's gonna recognize that you have Black in you. So I guess I would give them the same advice as any child that has Black DNA, whether it's physically present or not, is to make sure that you continue to find your people. Because if not, it's going to always feel terrible. You're going to always have your feelings hurt. And you're going to be out away from your people. And you're going to have that stuff happen, but you're going to need to be able to call or go to your people. Your tribe, they say. Find your tribe. Man, I got my tribe, and the tribe keeps growing. So it's very, very important. That's the advice I would give.
I got biracial children as well, and they are lighter skinned than his. So to push that, you know, my dad did the same thing. I'm biracial, obviously. I feel like he was prepping me throughout my childhood to be in a situation where I was always going to be othered in Iowa, no matter what room I was in. And there's a lot of theory of the bloom to Quinn, a lot of French philosophers we were talking about, what is it, black skin's white mask. What was the other one? Wicked of the Earth. And there's this push that came out of that to have yourself and hold yourself as a whatever singularity. And a spot like, and what I mean by that, a spot like Des Moines, you are channeled into these groupings. I was an athlete. We were talking about this last night. I was an athlete. You have these options to be a musician, but you got to be the best in the Midwest to make it out of that. We don't have, and I'm trying to teach my daughters this, and another reason why we are on the East Coast, we don't have mechanisms, I don't feel like, in place where they can be a whatever singularity and be successful at it. So my advice would be to try to find them something that is completely outside the realm of what they are supposed to be within that blackness or that whiteness in Iowa, because that will push them and propel them into different things outside of Iowa as well, and hopefully bring them back.
So my child is black. She is light-skinned, though. She is light-skinned. I don't know how that happened, but she is still light-skinned. But so my answer, though, sincerely, is so my child has lived in Brooklyn since she was 1 year old. In a black community, went to black schools, has a household full of, so we live in a low-income black community. She goes to a low-income black school, but also at any given time in our house, you might have Ta-Nehisi Coates, Jelani Cobb, right? The head of the NAACP Legal Defense Fund. She has seen every type of black person that there is, and she can move in any black circle. She doesn't feel she's better than our black neighbors or the black kids at her school. She hangs out with her baby cousins, but she also can walk in the room. And so I say that to say, I have built an armor around my child where I did not allow a white society to build her self-concept. I built that. She would tell you, and she loves her white grandmother. Don't get it twisted. Like, she wants her to come move down in our bottom apartment of our brownstone. She just told my mom that the other day. But my child, I would not let her watch any white princess movies growing up. She had to sneak and watch Frozen. When she came home singing the song, I wanted to know, where the hell did you learn that song from? Right, and it wasn't because there's nothing wrong with white culture, but she was going to get that. She was going to go out into a world where everything she saw was going to be white, and she was going to see the absence of herself, and that was going to shape her perception of herself, particularly as a black girl. So I was determined in our household, all her books would be black, all her dolls would be black. The movies she was going to watch, if you watched A Princess, it was going to be Mulan, or it was going to be Princess and the Frog, and we couldn't watch Pocahontas because that was very problematic, right? But it was like, I mean, I'm being funny, but I'm being very serious. So by the time that my child would start going out into the world and seeing different messages, you can't tell my child anything. She has no shame whatsoever about being a black girl. She loves being a black girl. She wears her natural hair, right? So we have to create that armor. If you build that armor in your child, it doesn't mean that your child isn't going to go out in the world and not suffer, that they won't experience racism, but they won't internalize that. They will understand. My daughter understands racism to be the problem of the racist. That racism has nothing to do with her and her self-worth. So that's what I would say for you.
I believe there's a gentleman in the front row.
Thank you for calling me a gentleman. So I grew up in Hampton, Virginia. From where I lived, I could look out into the Chesapeake Bay and see the island where the first enslaved people came. And I always asked, because oftentimes I was marching to the beat of a different drum. Sometimes I had no drumsticks, but I continued to march. Why? When I was a senior in high school, I preached, well, I'm a retired preacher, but my speech was about the Lovings being able to marry. I was booed. When I got home, my father said, "Would you do it again?" And I said, yes. So the torch has been passed on to lots of people here. You three are major torch bearers for justice, for fairness. I so herald being able to sit at your feet. I laud your kindness. I laud your wisdom. The three of you have made the world a better place. Thank you.
Please, raise your hand. Mia, you might be a little closer. If you could pass that mic down to the woman in the middle, yeah.
Hi. This is such a blessing to be able to experience this. My family and I moved to Iowa 10 years ago from Chicago by way of Madison, Wisconsin, so we got a chance to slow down before we got here. Otherwise, it would have been too much. Just the enlightenment that you all have shared with us, I want to know, where can we find the list of things that we could be investing in to help? Is there a page? Again, I'm new here. People, I've been here 10 years, and so when I run into people, they're like, wow, you've been here 10 years? Yep, because I stay in my house. I only come out for different things. So where can we find how we can help invest in Waterloo, how we can help with your projects and your land? Is there a certain, besides your individual pages?
We're going to have a page built in 3 days. Just
If that happens, we have the Des Moines Public Art Foundation, and that is normally a good spot to start. It lacks a lot of the things that we're talking about, but they're always down to think and dream with us. They funded a lot of my projects, a lot of my art exhibitions and projects throughout the years as well. We have one opening at Oak Ridge. We had one opening at Oak Ridge 2 years ago. Des Moines Public Art Foundation, I would say, is one. But we need that page built. That sounds beautiful. Normally, you know, you have seeds, you have individuals at Oak Ridge sitting over here as well. A lot of times you don't get any shine on those projects unless they're in the Des Moines Register, unless some little magazine's writing about them, and at that time it's almost too late. So yeah, I think collectively that's something that we should be building up with maybe the Des Moines Public Art Foundation. I have no clue if that's a good option. I'll let BJ speak on that. Robert, speak on that.
It's all good, bro. We're past that. You can say it.
That was a little jab.
Yeah. Yeah, you know, it's like, this is our home state. There's a bunch of trash around. We'd want to pick it all up and have it be gone the next week. But a little bit every week or a little bit every year will make that difference. So I don't know all the politics and the way things are structured still myself. From my own lens, I do know communities and organizations that Jordan's mentioned that I just am fond of because I grew up with them. I know what they're doing, but there's a lot too. There's pros and cons with that. Sometimes in Des Moines, there's multiple nonprofits and organizations that open up and they initiatives that start, which the intention's good, but sometimes it takes away from another organization that's already doing that, and then they're knocking on the same door for funding. So some of these organizations like Des Moines Public Art, I ain't never done nothing with them. They ain't never sent me a check. If there's someone in the room, I ain't never talked to you. So that ain't for me. Send me the money. Like what Nikole said, I'm all about independence and building up. Like, I'm trying to build my own structure. That doesn't mean I won't work with entities like this, because that would hurt my career. But I said to y'all earlier, I'm not chasing it anymore. I've done so much work everywhere else. I can't chase anything in my home state anymore. So if the opportunities present themselves and they seem authentic to the work I'm doing, I'd consider them. But otherwise, I'm focused on building my own pyramid. So if you like something that you've seen up here, if it resonates with the work that Nikole's doing from a public education after school program, if it resonates with what Jordan's doing from a land activation perspective and land art and activating space, you have that. And y'all know what I do. So none of us are trying to eat off each other's plate. We're all trying to eat together. And so you find your tribe, find your people. You're here in town. As you do step out of the house and you find a natural draw towards certain things going on, you can't do it all. But the ancestors and God, they put us in a certain place at a certain time for a reason. So when that happens, make sure you pay attention, because there's probably something being presented to you right there.
All right, I'm going to go up top here. And I'll just add, I'm happy to also be a resource for anybody to help be a community connector. So Des Moines Art Center, Jill Featherstone, or if you're just, I'm happy to help be a connector at any time.
all of the things you've spoken about today, many, probably most, are the first time I've ever heard about them. I saw a program on TV recently that exhibited a sixth generation black farmer. I don't think most people in this room even knew we had black farmers in Iowa, to be honest. In my opinion, and I don't know how you get it done, but you probably have a lot of people in here who would be willing to put this whole road in your exhibit on the road. You know, it really needs to be seen and heard by many more.
Thank you for saying that. I am new to this, so I'm appreciative of some of the resources, even in this actual building, who have already extended themselves to even do the exhibit, let alone continuing and understanding the depth and the intentionality and the heart, blood, sweat, and tears that was put in this exhibit. Now, keep in mind, I do get out of the house. I could probably get out of the house more. There's a couple exhibits I've seen at the Art Center here that have been really impactful for me. I haven't been the best about coming to the Iowa Artists exhibits. I don't know why. I must have missed it. I might have been heads down working on my own practice. I didn't know about it. And I didn't even know Jordan's exhibit was the Iowa Artists exhibit. But that changed my life. In 2016, when I came here and saw Jordan had a cop car cut in half and had a brother bench pressing with rims, and burn a hole in a Jordan rookie card. I mean, I can visualize everything because it was the first time in my life being in the Art Center. I was 32 years old. I'm so glad my friend dragged me there. Now, I was still addicted to alcohol and drugs, but that single moment changed my life. So once I worked through some of those addictive things that were in my way, the first thing that came to my mind when I had clarity was that. So if you can understand, how important it is for me to see my people in this own space, I'm a living testimony of that. So I know how this game works. Y'all gonna see me outside a lot until this show comes down. I'm trying to do every program, every class. I'm trying to see every kid, because there's a lot of energy right now. And I know, like, I want this to be contagious because I don't want to be the only one here, to be honest.
I just want to quickly add the beauty. So I live in Brooklyn. It is hard to have impact in a city as big as New York. It is easy to have substantial impact in Iowa. Like, your investment doesn't even have to be that grandiose to have a massive impact. We could do a lot here. The community is small, the needs are great, but the community is small enough that you could really do something substantial if you choose. And I also did joke, but 1619freedomschool.org.
Hi, am I supposed to stand up? All right, y'all can't tell, I'm kind of short. So first of all, Robert, this is my friend. We hang out in various places, sometimes on black farms. Nikole, it's great to hear you speak. I've heard about you, read your things, and it's refreshing. Jordan, what up? Question to you, a lot of your work is related to breathing, inhale, exhale. Can you speak about that and the importance of that within the black body and how that's related to the nature around us?
My man, that's my right hand. My left hand, he the friend thing and the homeboy thing. That's my guy. This is rough. But yeah, the inhale, exhale thing, the meditation comes from the treatment of trauma and how to deal with toxic stress and trauma in youth. And I was doing boys and girls programming back in like 2008 around Des Moines, and a lot of kids had no idea that there were these breathing exercises that you could do to calm yourselves down in a hype moment. And then we all know what happened. You know, the black men were being, killed on television. They've been being killed in America for 400 years, but we have cell phones now, so you see it. And a lot of that came from that movement being in Ferguson and then being, in Minneapolis during all that with another one of my friends. And that difficulty and I was speaking on it before about movement in Iowa as a black or brown individual. I was speaking on the inability to just breathe, the simple things that you do to bring oxygen into your bloodstream. That entire, body of work came out of that. It came out of the I Can't Breathe movement. The Walker Art Center had me as an artist in residence. They acquired a couple pieces about that, but that's not the goal. The goal is to have those public pieces. For like Oak Ridge, for example, to have these like neon lit pieces that actually breathe, that inhale and exhale as adult male or female at rest at the same time. So if you are in that situation and it's facing Oak Ridge and you are a young adult and you're dealing with trauma, hopefully you can visually connect with that and sync up that breathing as a mantra. And that work is really important to me. And the way that we reactivate green space within these concrete systems that are, extremely racist. We talk about environmental apartheid, racist urban planning. We have to have these visual cues within that. And a lot of it came out of being in Ferguson and making a lot of 2D work and then pushing into the community because I felt like that work needed to be stronger and affect people in a direct way. That direct action line is really important in my work. So it all came from that as well.
My name is Sharp Smith, and I'm talking too loud. Hannah, I just want to, Nikole, I'm sorry. I just want to tell you just what an impact the book has had on me, and too many things to go into. But I just came here, to hear you all. But I have felt so much energy and love from this audience through the clapping. I mean, there's like a pent-up source here that just has me shaking. And I wonder what you feel. I want to hear, how do you feel? How has this audience made you feel about your work, about the future? Because I feel something different here.
I want to speak to that because I appreciate you recognizing that. But if I'm not speaking for them, but if I was in this room with just Nikole and Jordan, I would feel what you're feeling. Because I know what I possess, and I understand the power that we have, not because of the position, but because of the authentic work that we're doing. We're vibrating. And so we're vibrating together on this stage right now. And so I talk about this in my work and just the power in unity. You're feeling the energy coming off of us in our truth, in our verbals, and you're feeling it being recycled through a community that understands or is at least consuming, even if it's new learnings. And that energy is not, you can't make it up. Sometimes you can't even describe it. But I know exactly what you're feeling because I want to run through that wall. I don't even know what for, but that's how I feel.
Yeah, listen, I second that. Like I feel like so joyful right now. I don't know what I expected out of this conversation. I was really excited to meet you. I already know you, so I don't have to think about you. I mean, truly, I was so excited to meet you and then to be here and like have this type of conversation. One is just intellectually stimulating, it is spiritually affirming, but to also understand like when you're putting it out and you are receiving it back from the people in the room, and I see, even when it's feeling a little uncomfortable what we're saying up here because we're very candid, you still feel the willingness to embrace that discomfort and take it in, and that's so meaningful. I saw you sitting there with the 1619 book open on your lap, right? And I'm just thinking that as ugly as what's happening outside of these walls, right? And there's some real ugliness happening in our country that I don't think they represent most of us. I think people in this room represent most of us. So what I hope, though, right, is that you don't leave the energy at the door, right? That you carry that energy outside of here and realize that collectively we have tremendous power to build a different world than what we have. That everything we see in our society that we don't like, everything that we see is unfair has been constructed. And that means it can be deconstructed and we can build something new. So take that power out of these walls.
I'm not gonna add too much to that, but the thing about it is, like, it's Nikole Hannah-Jones too, though. Like, I'm like, like I said, I met her at the UN, and it took a lot. Like, I feel like I'm a really chill, confident dude. And when I walked up to her, I said, "I'm from Iowa." She said, "Okay." What do I do next? What am I to say? So I just immediately started speaking about my accolades, you know, and I didn't know what else to do. So it's Nikole too. We're standing on your shoulders, you know, and all the work that you've been putting in for Black Iowans, and it's an amazing feat. And you're holding light, and you are light, and I'm, you know, honored to be up here with both of you, and Laura.
I know Iowa and Des Moines, we are good with standing ovations, and if there's ever been a lecture here that deserves that, this is the one.